Up. Nathan's ready. All right, this is Jeremy Cogan with Blockchain WTF. I like it, yes. Round of applause.
Thank you, thank you. Hey everybody, thanks for stopping by our talk about the importance of blockchain education. Hope everyone's having a great conference. I know I am. I've done a couple conferences before, so I am no pro by any means. This is it. Closer mouth? Oh, there we go. Yeah, I got that now. No pro by any means. I have done a couple conferences, never a super conference before, so this is uncharted waters. Hopefully I don't hit any reefs. We'll see. Our discussion today is focused on how to more effectively teach these enigmatic, confusing technologies known as blockchains and cryptocurrencies. We're going to be spending the next 20 minutes or so together, so I figured I'd introduce myself, give you some background on myself, and then we'll dive right in. Hopefully you'll walk out of here with better understanding on how to convey blockchain concepts and ideas. There we go. I want to. All right, my name is Jeremy Cogan. I have a degree in legal studies from Indiana University Bloomington. Go Hoosiers. I focused on public policy and global econ there, and I'm currently a certified Bitcoin professional. I grew up in the Chicagoland area where I currently reside, and that's also the home base of our project, blockchain.wtf, and that's a .wtf instead of a .com, because our goal is to teach people what the fuck is a blockchain. It's simple. Pretty straightforward. I wish I came up with the name. More on blockchain.wtf in a minute, but I want to talk about my tech background just so you all have an idea where I'm coming from, have some context. So I grew up in the 90s. A lot of you probably recognize that image. I know I do. So I remember a time before the internet was widely used by everyone for everything. However, that pretty much changed by the time I was 8 or so. And it was really interesting seeing this change as a student because the curriculum didn't immediately catch up to the technology. My elementary school days were spent looking up topics in encyclopedia or looking for library books via card catalog. All the while, there was a technology right around the corner that would fundamentally change how we learned. Google would soon put the idea of encyclopedias in the rearview mirror to the celebration of everyone but encyclopedia salesmen. So I grew up and I saw this change, this gradual change that obviously didn't happen all at once, but over time I saw this technology take hold. And looking back, I recognized how much the learning process was impacted by the introduction of the internet. And it certainly made for a more efficient, informed, and connected world. So let's fast forward a little bit and talk about how I stumbled into the rabbit hole that is blockchain technology. Previous to November 2016, I had never heard the term blockchain. I had no real understanding of Bitcoin or cryptocurrency. I had heard of Bitcoin, I was aware of its existence, couldn't tell you much more beyond that. About that time I met our project manager, Jordan, and he dropped this bombshell on me that is blockchain technology, and he threw around all these promises and hopes for a technology, and of course I was skeptical, so I went and did my own research, but the more and more research I did, and always do your own research, the more and more research I did, I found that these claims actually did have some backing. Technology was early, however, this technology did have the potential to change the world, and that's when I fell down the proverbial Bitcoin rabbit hole. So how did blockchain.wtf come to be? Around this time last year, our founder, Taylor Gehring, and 4 or 5 of us sat down, and we were introduced to this idea that was going to bring blockchain technology and knowledge about that technology to the masses. At this point, I was knee-deep in this stuff. Blockchain had completely captivated my imagination. A technology that I had never heard of 6 months prior now had me completely obsessed, and I wasn't the only one. You could definitely see the growing demand for knowledge on these topics. And along with that, there were more and more early believers in blockchain technology and what it could do for the world. And most of us believers saw that adoption, or at the very least greater recognition of the technology, was on the close horizon. So what is blockchain WTF and what do we do? So this led us to create blockchain.wtf, a website that would take this elusive, new, and confusing technology and would decipher everything about blockchains and cryptocurrencies. Ideally, it'd be the resource that I didn't have when I was looking to learn about blockchains. I constantly had to jump around from website to website. I had to jump through hoops just to get basic information, maybe jumping three websites just to really solidify one topic. The problem was that there was no all-encompassing resource about blockchain, and that was the goal, and that became the goal of blockchain.wtf. So why bother? Why start this venture? Beyond all the excitement and potential that we saw in this technological change, we believe that the internet is broken. No, that's kind of a big umbrella term or statement. Let me explain what I mean. What I'm trying to say is that there are so many issues with the internet. The fact is, everyone here has probably experienced some of these issues or inefficiencies. Let's look at some examples. In my opinion, right now, the biggest issue with our current internet is the lack of privacy. And that's a pretty broad issue. It's kind of two-pronged. Not only do you have to worry about losing control of your personal information via hacks, which we'll touch on later, but with many countries around the world, you have to worry about government legally or illegally monitoring your communications. That's reality for several parts of the world. A lot of this stuff relates back to the principle of centralization. As history has progressed, these really large social and financial institutions have become more and more ingrained in our society. We form governments to maintain order and create order, and banks and the like to control our financial systems. Relying on these centralized entities, powerful entities, wasn't really a choice unless you were an anarchist or enjoyed keeping your life savings under your mattress. There really wasn't an opt-out button when it came to being part of these centralized institutions. You simply didn't get a choice, and the fact is, most people still don't know that with this new technology, they do now have a choice. More issues with the internet, the lack of a standardized currency. Even though we have a global marketplace, we don't really have the necessary interoperability via currency that could really take full advantage of this newfound marketplace. Cryptocurrency allows us to transcend these financial borders. Another issue, lack of identity protections. The internet isn't a place that's going to protect your identity. You can take every step to secure your devices. However, with constant hacks at major corporations, odds are your information is out there right now to the highest bidder. This completely undermines any identity or credit system that we have. The good news is that there were some visionaries, such as the unknown Satoshi Nakamoto, who saw these problems develop, and a solution for a better internet was presented. Fact is that the blockchain is coming and the future is decentralized. If all goes according to plan, blockchain is going to affect every one of our daily lives in the not too far distant future. Even though this is the case, there are still a lot of barriers to teaching people about this technology. Let me give you an example. So how was everybody's Thanksgiving? No, I didn't misspeak. I'm fully aware it was 4 months ago, but I want you to think back. You probably saw a lot of friends or family that you might not see very often, and the inevitable question that comes up is, what are you up to nowadays? It was actually my grandma who asked this, and there I was given the seemingly impossible task of explaining what a blockchain or Bitcoin is to my 78-year-old grandmother. Not an enviable position. By the way, she's never used the internet, or even a computer for that matter. But this problem isn't unique to the technologically challenged. Over the past year, I've had the challenge of explaining blockchain and cryptocurrency to my peers, people who grew up with the internet. And that's still no easy task. Even people that grew up with the internet come to this new space and are immediately overwhelmed. Everything is scary, complex, so hard to understand that people don't know where to start, and they get scared off. There are several factors that lead people to being completely overwhelmed, and at blockchain.wtf, it's our job to decipher each of these factors so we can teach this technology more effectively. Some barriers to teaching blockchain technology that we've made note of include a lack of awareness. While Bitcoin, crypto, and blockchain had a breakout year in 2017, there's still so many people who are not aware of or are misinformed about blockchain technology. Additionally, cryptocurrency has had to overcome a stigma. A lot of people learned about, and I'm the case for this actually, a lot of people learned about crypto when popular and anonymous black markets started popping up, and Bitcoin has had to overcome this stigma. However, recent years has kind of seen a legitimization of the currency. For example, we have a chair in our office affectionately known as the Bitcoin chair because it was purchased from Overstock.com using Bitcoin. So Bitcoin's had quite the journey from the Silk Road to legitimacy via Overstock.com, and we're seeing more and more payment options being added on a daily basis now. Another barrier to teaching blockchain technology, I think people have been caught up in the rapid growth. Opinions are influenced by the media, YouTube, or by what your neighbor or coworker is saying. And that's led to an environment where people kind of dive in without being fully informed. And that could be a very dangerous prospect, especially when it involves finances. I've actually read stories about people even going into debt recently in order to purchase cryptocurrency. Another major problem that really discourages people from diving into blockchain technology, complex tech ideas and jargon that really aren't necessary. I don't come from a tech background, as I mentioned earlier, studied public policy with some economics sprinkled in, but I do consider myself somewhat intelligent and capable, even when it comes to computers, but there's always been something about tech that's been intimidating, that has steered me away from really diving into this monolith that is technology. And by extension, the perception that blockchain has to be rocket science isn't true. When presented in the right way, these concepts can be easily grasped and lead to a solid foundation upon which to learn blockchains, cryptocurrency, and all related topics. So many resources in this space are needlessly complex. It's like they're trying to make themselves more complex to increase credibility, but that comes at the expense of accessibility. We're trying to do the exact opposite. We're never going to dumb down information, but we are going to offer it in an easy to digest and fun manner. The age of the technology and the room it's had to grow has led to an environment where innovation is constantly happening. The technology is so new and so is all this framework behind it. And this means that there's still a lot of room for innovation and improvement, and those two things are happening really fast. What's true one week isn't necessarily true the next. Hell, what's true one day isn't necessarily true the next in this space. The challenge of keeping people up to date is very real, which is why we try to update our content as soon as something changes. For example, about a month ago, we made a video about Rayblox, the Rayblox token, and the day that was released, Rayblox decided to rebrand to Nano, and a matter of hours after the video was released. We've definitely learned that you have to move on the fly, think on your feet, because not only is the demand for this information changing, the information itself is constantly evolving. I want to touch on something called the curse of knowledge. And it's an interesting concept that was introduced to me a while back, actually. Different topic, or in a different space. And it just states that once you learn something, it's hard to remember or relate to a time before you knew that fact. If you think about it, that makes it really hard to teach. People are coming in on the ground floor here, and you're an expert. You need to make sure you're going onto the ground floor to talk to them on their level. You can't still be a couple levels ahead of them because that's not going to hit. These are beginners, and they are just not going to retain that information. And on that note, we've asked ourselves, how can we more effectively teach blockchain? And I just touched on it, onboarding. Every single one of you in this room has a different level of experience when it comes to blockchains and cryptocurrencies. So it would be ridiculous to all teach you the same thing in the same order. If we just put out one set of general information, well, that would just be boring and redundant for those who are well versed in blockchain, and it'd be a very easy way to scare away the novices. So our goal is to know our audience. Our response to this issue, we've made we've taken a 3 or 4 lane approach that is simply labeled ranging from beginner to expert. And our job is to provide information for all of these levels, so anybody seeking blockchain technology has a suitable starting point. Our goal is to get 3 or 4 separate packages up, so no matter what your blockchain level of experience, we've got you covered. However, we've realized simply providing ideas is not enough. You need to make ideas sticky. And you want to make memorable, not forgettable content. Interesting stat, on average, for every conversation you have, I think 12 to 24 hours later, you're only going to remember 25% of that information from that conversation. So, what makes up the messages that make this 25% effective? Telling you a fact is great. Will that message land? Maybe. What's really interesting is that you can have the same information delivered in 2 separate ways, with one message sticking and the other same message in a different delivery mechanism completely going in one ear and out the other. So the question is, what makes for memorable information? Well, a couple of authors, brothers Chip and Dan Heath, answered that question in this book, Made to Stick. So there's a few characteristics for sticky messages, messages that land. They're simple. What action do you want to compel? What's the one message that you want people to take away from what you're trying to teach? From my experiences, I found that analogies and metaphors work the best for helping people understand these abstract blockchain topics. You're basically likening something unknown to something known, and that makes for a really effective way to teach. For example, instead of calling something a public key, call it an address. Make these terms as simple as possible so people don't get lost along the way. I can't tell you how many conversations I've had where people are following along. All of a sudden, I'll use a term that they don't get, and their eyes completely glaze over, and I've lost them for the conversation. The goal is not getting to that point, and when they do get to that point, bringing them back. Gaining attention is one thing. Keeping attention is a whole different animal. So what you want to do is deviate from the norm and break out of your expected routine. For example, I know an actor who did a lot of open auditions. And his goal was to stand out from the crowd, out of 100 people all going for the same part. So he would go to an open audition, and there would be a chair right here on stage, and for people to sit or do whatever. And his first action was to jump on the chair and then start reading his part while on the chair. And a couple of times, he obviously, if you do it enough, you're going to miss the chair. He fell flat on his behind. And an interesting note, every single audition where he missed the chair and fell on his behind, he either got a callback or the part. That's probably because what he did was very unexpected, and that made him stand out. So if you relate this to storytelling, basically, telling a story with a twist is the most effective. Your brain's going along thinking it has where you're going along on the story figured out, and all of a sudden you make a left turn. And the thing is, you're going to remember that left turn because you're deviating from the norm. Sticky messages are also concrete. We all learn in different ways, and each message must be clear and relatable. Here's a perfect example. Back when I was growing up, I went to the movies a lot. And back then, when you went to the movies, everybody got popcorn. I'm talking about almost everybody. Then some news came about what is actually in that popcorn. And it wasn't the best news for popcorn sales, let's put it that way. The amount of saturated fat that's in the oil to make popcorn, or one medium bag, is about 20 grams. Now, that stat alone may make you think twice about eating popcorn. Sure. But it's a fact with no context. But if you add in some context in there to help shape your message, the listener has something to relate to. So something like this. The amount of saturated fat that's in this medium bag of popcorn is X amount of your daily allowance. And one medium popcorn happens to be 100% of your daily allowance of saturated fat. Now, that may excuse me, you may think twice about eating popcorn again. However, you got to ask yourself, is there a better way to deliver this message? A lot of people are visual learners, and we really haven't provided anything on that level yet. So we have this. They used a comparison. They laid out breakfast, Big Mac, steak dinner, basically enough food to feed anybody well enough for a day. The point of laying out all that food to show that all of those meals has the same amount of saturated fat in that small bag or medium bag of popcorn. So just to recap, we went from telling you a fact to telling you a fact while providing context that puts that fact in place to giving you a visual comparison. Message 1 might have landed, 2 more likely, but 3, let me tell you, I wrote this example mainly from memory, and I read this book about 8 years ago. So that's a pretty sticky message. Another sticky message is to invoke emotion. Perfect example of this is something that we've seen on TV, basically trying to combat world hunger. Donate this, fight world hunger, that's a great message. However, donate this and we'll send you a picture of the child you're helping. We'll send you an update about what they're doing, how they're doing, what their life is like. That simply raised donations through the roof. So the question becomes, can you evoke emotion with blockchain technology? Just kind of a weird question, but if you look beyond the currency applications, blockchain can really help the world. The technology is about so much more than cryptocurrencies and financial services. There are so many potential applications that could just make the world a better place, that could be good for society as a whole. I know somebody who's sending back money to his family in a different country, and when you're dealing with remittance, you're dealing with probably about 20% fees. They take 20% off the top. I introduced him to cryptocurrency, and he's saving probably about 15% at the very least. So this technology can bank the unbanked, deal with remittance, record keeping, sustainability. There's obviously these business and financial applications, but I'm firmly of the belief that blockchain can help change the world. And that in itself is a very motivating thought. So why do we think that there's hope for blockchain technology and education? We're not giving out fish, we're teaching people to fish. We want to create content that engages critical thinking, this allowing for more informed user base that can formulate opinions on their own and function in this cryptocurrency environment. These are the people that come back for more. We try to be as accessible as possible. We're always available on social media, and every video I make sure to mention any questions, throw those down below in the comments, and we make sure always to get back to people. Another thing that I've noticed, 80% of our users are under the age of 35. So kind of the experience that I had with the internet growing up in the 90s, a lot of people are going to have with blockchain now. And some of you might recognize the Helen Lovejoy meme, won't somebody please think of the children? It became a popular catchphrase on The Simpsons. And I find it very, very encouraging that I do see some younger people trying to dip their toe into cryptocurrency. And pretty much by the time they're adults, they'll be well versed and it'll pretty much be their way of life. I saw a question in the back. Website visitors, and I think those are our Google Analytics for our website. Yeah, our YouTube numbers are similar. So there are some additional hurdles that we've noticed just in the process. You're dealing with short attention spans. The quickest way to become irrelevant is to have lame content. You have to have fun with what you're doing. You also have to put it out there on social media, make it accessible. Overcome these misconceptions. Know we're a long way from the Silk Road, and institutional legitimacy is happening as we speak. Another goal that we have to help decipher the constant barrage of current events that's happening. There's a lot of false information out there and even conflicting information, a lot of scams out there, and it leads to an environment where we really can't trust anybody, and we want to become that trusted resource. Obviously, that's something that has to be earned. Another reason that we're doing this is security. Blockchain literacy is really the only way to truly provide security for your funds. And through this, we try to emphasize security. We don't want people getting into something that they're not prepared for. So we've helped people recover funds, people's wallet. We get messages that my wallet's wiped, panic ensues. So we've responded to this by trying to teach people how to back up their wallets. And a lot of times when these issues, 2 minutes? All right, I'll wrap it up. A lot of times when we have these issues, they're just comments on our YouTube channel. So we go and it gives us a way to directly speak to our users. And we've helped out a lot of people that had some minor problems that aren't any big deal, but for them it wasn't a minor problem. For them it was a major one. So I'm going to wrap it up here. First of all, thank you all for listening. We really appreciate it. I want you to check out blockchain.wtf, our website. Again, our goal is to be your one-stop shop for all your blockchain resource needs. We're also based off the Chicagoland area. If you're ever around or want to collaborate, feel free to email us via the website, or I'll actually be outside with some business cards and there to answer some questions. Thanks again.
Thanks, Jeremy. Fantastic. Okay, so we're on a 7-minute break. We're back here starting at 3:45 with